Hello everyone, this is MyFan27 and welcome to a quick recording of Mabinogi. And in this particular recording, I'll basically be showing you guys how it is I make money in this game, and how I do it in my own manner of way, considering there are many ways to earn money in this game, but I prefer doing what I call the old-fashioned way, as in, ever since the beginning of the game, there were hunting quests, which would allow you to earn a certain amount of gold, for every 10 Fomer scrolls, of whatever mob that the quest, required you to go and hunt. And majority of the, mobs were field mobs, but there were a few that were only able to appear in dungeons, such as snakes, if I recall, which had Fomer scrolls to them. But the only time I recall them appearing was certain instances of Sierra and a few instances of Theode, for that matter. They may appear elsewhere, but I don't recall them appearing anywhere else to my knowledge. Like, don't get me wrong, I've played through quite a bit of the game, but I've only completed so much that it ultimately means that despite what all generations I've actually managed to clear, I'm still pretty much a novice at what I do, even though I will not lie, I actually do have Grandmaster Warrior and Grandmaster Knight. So those are things that I just ended up doing on my own spare time. Meaning, at minimum, I've had to earn at least 2 million gold for the certificates that are required for you to ultimately become Grandmaster for those two talents, or for any other talent, an additional 1 million gold for those. And if I can find room to stop here for a moment, just need to get to the side here where they won't aggro me. This pet you see me with here, this is a white ferret. This is a white ferret I've had for quite several years by this point. And the icon above my character, that's because I have a phoenix that I use to help assisting with reviving me, and often a phoenix I often use to help revive and also bless my equipment whenever I fall unconscious and then revive right off the bat. But yeah, so what do I honestly think of Mavi after all these years? Well, for one, I first got introduced to it back in high school when I was a mere freshman, and while this isn't the account I was using during my first 3 years of high school, this is indeed my original account I had actually made for Navi, but I had originally botched up the character creation and ended up with a character that's on the wrong server from what my friends were at the time on the Mari server, which is the one I'm on now to this day. And then basically I ended up choosing, I think, Tarlatch by accident, which led to me having to recreate my character and then figure out a temporary means of getting around the fact I couldn't use my original account for quite some time because I had to wait for the character to be deleted so I could do new things with it. And then for quite some time I was using the secondary account for so long that it wasn't until after I'd graduated from high school, in which my email address I had used to create that secondary account, my school email was wiped completely clean because I no longer attended high school at all, so I had no need for the email address I had first obtained when I had entered that particular school when I was only in middle school. And that also played a big factor in wiping the accounts I had for other games I had that I used my school email for. Meaning my Gmail email is now currently the sole email I use for the games I play nowadays, including but not limited to some other MMOs that exist like Dragon's Prophet, now currently called Savage Hunt for reasons I do not quite understand just yet. The age-old Neopets, which has been a thing for me ever since at least middle school, maybe even earlier than that. I know I was only in 6th grade when I mentioned it aloud, but I think it might have been earlier than that when I had gotten into Neopets. And then with Mabby, as I said, it was my freshman year of high school. I'd gone into it by then because a friend of mine I'd first met in 8th grade prior ended up convincing me to eventually make an account for Mabinogi and give it a try with him and his friends. And things would change over the years between how Mabby was back then to how it is now. And let's just say, while I never ultimately got too far on my secondary account I had made until it got wiped altogether, I did, however, get quite a good amount far on this one. If I can demonstrate that real quick here. So, let me pull up the skills for this. With Paladin, I have everything at rank 1, but I also have to deal with the fact not all of my passive defenses will activate at once, which is basically the same thing for Falcon Elf, for those who play as elves and have the transformation skills, which is actually intentional because Dark Knight and Savage Beast will actually activate all of their passive defenses at once, guaranteed, but Paladin and Falcon Elf only are intended to do so for at least one of them, or maybe all 3 at once, at a given chance. And then I also got this, but I haven't completed G12 yet. I have completed G11, but right now I'm not in the mood to really use the Bryonic, so, well, actually, give me a second. But yeah, I have the Bryonic, I have that, And I have Smash, which is at rank 1. Most of my combat mastery, my close combat talent skills are at rank 1. And there are a few that are not at rank 1, I assure you that much. Primarily because I couldn't be bothered to... I couldn't really be bothered to rank up everything within the close combat list of skills, which I know the tab on here doesn't list just close combat alone. Blunt mastery is rank A, for example. Let's see. Axe mastery is rank F. That's one skill I haven't managed to get done anytime recently. Evasion is still rank F because I'm still trying to figure out how to really time it right with an enemy's ranged or magic attack, which I've never been able to quite figure out the exact timing. The only other skill I can think of that is not at rank 1 yet is... Let me just check here real quick. The only other close combat skill I know I have, which is currently not at rank 1 yet, would be Charge, basically. And the reason for that mostly ties in with the fact I am a human, so unlike with giants, you can't just use Charge simply by virtue of being a giant, in which you can mow things down just by your sheer size alone. When playing as a human and using Charge, you have to have a shield equipped in order for you to use Charge, which training Charge on a human can be a bit more problematic, because shields are expensive and they're pricey to repair, and that's just one of the downsides of a human compared to an advantage the giants have, even though giants, along with elves, are specialized, meaning a giant is only going to be really good at melee, and elf is only going to be really good at ranged or magic, even though there have been loopholes to that with the newer talents that exist. And then as for any other skill to have it for close combat combat mastery is Dan 1 right now, which is so far the only skill of that sort I have at Dan 1 or greater. That's the first skill I'd ever obtained with Dan 1 rank. Still working on the figuring out how to achieve Dan 2 for combat mastery, but other than that, I think I'm content with where I am right now until further notice. I will say this, once I get a chance to rebirth again this upcoming Saturday, I'm going to possibly rebirth into a different talent. Been meaning to give the Chain Slash talent a bit more of a chance than I did when it first came out approximately last year. And then with Chain Slash, I can increase some of the skills for that and get some benefits for some other stats I have, in addition to especially luck, because that'll help with my critical rate and all, among other things. Like, I know apparently the wiki says that luck doesn't actually play a factor in the lucky finish, but it actually does, to my knowledge, appear to influence lucky bonus. Because every time I would get a lucky bonus on my homestead, I would end up having my luck stat, as it currently is, displayed on the system log, which normally doesn't happen for lucky finish, but it does happen for lucky bonus. So I've been meaning to investigate that, and eventually investigate it for lucky finish as well, because I am somewhat suspicious on the fact it doesn't affect lucky finish. Because I tried looking up the reference source they said for it not affecting lucky finish, and don't mind the style tab getting away for now. I have it extended beyond when I had it unlocked for a while, but currently I have no use for it. So every time I get an item I can equip that doesn't take up a slot in the style tab for now, it'll automatically go into the style tab, which is not something I wanted to do for the time being. Because if I get any drops for equipment from these bears or any other enemies I face, for me to get my training done or any other kind of hunting I typically do in the field, typically what I do with the equipment, unless it's something I really desire, is I typically sell it. And the only times it's equipment I really desire that I'll keep, typically means it's the Lion Claw Lance, which is, for the most part, only obtainable when it is dropped by the lion enemies that appear in Core. And then with these Burgundy Bears, there's a reason I do these particular mobs over any other Foamer Scroll quest, hunting quests available, is because not only did her scrolls drop at a reliable rate, unlike what I can say for things like the Grey Wolf, Dire Wolves, or the other type of bears in the game, the Foamer Scrolls for Burgundy Bears drop at a surprisingly alarmingly common rate, whenever they feel like dropping, that is. And not only that, but even with the fishing bonus that other Foamer Scroll quests can get, which gives around 30% more gold than they would simply getting it from a vendor, the Burgundy Bear hunting quest is the most highest paying hunting quest in the game, in that it flat out gives you just shy under 50k gold in the form of 48k gold per quest. And also the Bakram boost, that's new thing you guys might not have seen in my older videos I've done for Navi. That began being a thing when Chain Slash was first introduced. And while it typically is mostly for regenerating the Chain Slash's energy bar for that. Never could figure out how to pronounce it. Dorka? Is that the pronunciation? Because that's how I always pronounce it, but I feel like that's not actually how it's pronounced. Dorcha? Silent? Soft CH, hard CH. I can never figure that out. and now it is no longer raining, which means drop rates are not as common as they would be when raining, because that's actually something I take advantage of whenever I do hunting quests, is that I take advantage of the weather, because weather actually does influence the drop rates a tiny amount. And you might be wondering, how do I have all these bags I have open here? Considering most players will typically notice that I must be at least a late game player, even though I'm not really not. I'm not really that high powerful yet. So I have these bags mostly from events, mostly from buying them on the auction house, which, by the way, that's a brand new thing as well, which makes selling items a lot easier for guys like me who simply can't afford to remain idle or other things when it comes to selling items, or not able to afford guild houses, which can be used for selling things, which I don't think that's possible anymore considering the new update, but I could be wrong. But yeah, these bags were from events or from me buying them off other players from the auction house. One of which is part of a new system they implemented around the time they introduced the chain slash talent, being the soul stream inventory. Now, I would go into how exactly that works, but the system is complicated to explain a little bit. And the best way I can describe it, there's a new level called a potential level, which gives you various rewards and perks, including a stat point system, which is actually pretty useful, because prior to the chain slash update being implemented, I use it to dump stat points into luck, because that was a stat I was relatively mediocre with at the time, because prior to chain slash there was no truly effective way of increasing the luck stat. And now that the chain slash update exists, there is a way to actually reliably increase luck, but that's primarily because of the fact chain slash relies on luck in order to deal damage, because chain blades, the weapons you use for that talent, have their balance determined by the luck stat, and if they're determined by any other stats, it's not my current knowledge just yet, but they're mostly influenced by luck more than any other stats. Now then, just gotta clear myself a bit of a path here, huh? Sorry if I'm quieting down a little bit. My throat is a bit sore due to the fact yesterday I attended my grandparents' 53rd anniversary with me and my dad, and they got Giannino's, and I sort of dined on JoJo's from there, that were fresh out of the oven, basically, and it kind of burnt the inside of my mouth a little bit. But yeah, that's just why my throat is a little bit hurting at the moment. And there's not really a whole lot much else I can say about Mabinogi right now. We're almost at the 30-minute limit, as I like to call it. The skill I'm using here to fly without a mount, for that matter, that's from the Doki Doki Island event. It's the couple's flight skill, which is the grand prize of the event, which that'll allow you to basically fly without the use of a mount in any part of the game that allows for flying in general. Now, there is a lesser version of it, which you unlock first, which allows you to do it on the titular island of the event you get the skill from, or the action from, as it's designated as. But yeah, as I said, there's not much else I can truly say at the moment. Primarily just, even after all these years from which I first originally heard of Abby back in 2009, or 2008, I think it was. It was one of those years, and all the way since then, up to this day, I've been enjoying it, and honestly think it's gotten a lot better over the years than it has been several years ago prior, when things were a lot harder, things were not as optimized, things were not as refined as they are nowadays. And honestly, I think it's worth the price of admission, which is free to play. And there are microtransactions you might have to worry about, but nothing that is too game breaking, I will say, considering they've been surprisingly lenient with the events, oftentimes giving out pets of very good quality to them that give some pretty useful perks for what those specific event only pets can do. Like, I remember the first pet I got from an event. Well, that wasn't the first one actually, but this is the first mount I got from an event, which is the Milky Way scooter. And basically, it's same thing as the regular scooter in the game. You can't dye it because it's locked to the Milky Way coloration, which can also be said for the Milky Way Ice Dragon and the Milky Way Bone Dragon they eventually did make. And then just to show the Bone Dragon here for reference. And there have been a few crossover events that they did recently. Recently, we just got finished with an event for the anime slash manga or whatever ReZero, in which one of the items they had on sale for that, among other things, was a pet whistle, which will allow you to get Patrask, which is land earth dragon is what she's called in the original source material for her, and she's of a specific breed, which she's the only one available in Mabi for use from that particular media. And yes, she is a female because that's what she is in the original ReZero source, because Patrask isn't the name of her species, it's the name of her as an individual. But she's referred to by Patrask as her race on Mabi if you were to ever own her. You cannot dye her or re-dye her like you can some other dragon pets, but this is noticeably the first pet in the game so far which resembles anything vaguely reminiscent of a theropod dinosaur, non-avian one anyways. Like we've had birds for quite a while now, but I was referring to more non-avian, as in raptors, stuff like that. Something more like a raptor-like body for someone that you can use for a mount, similar to what Patrask uses. or more of a bulkier type of drake, as in a dragon with no wings but four legs. That could also be used for a mount, but excuse me. But I think I've gone on for a little too long now, so we'll just wrap this up here. This has been MF217, Mighty Fan 217. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. See ya.